Welcome back to the Kicks and Picks podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you may have noticed it's just Coach Steve and Nick here again with you. Scotty away from us again this week. Last week was work. This week it's play. We miss him. We apologize without his editing skills that this might not be as streamlined as usual. But Nick and I are here to give you the best of Serie A and a little bit of Premier League too. So Nick, how you doing tonight?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. We I said it last week. We didn't necessarily have official picks. I know we kind of ran through the games. We'll do that again today, but I'm starting to feel pretty good about where we're at. I think our reads have been really good. I know the three of us, obviously in the group chat, we share our bets more often than not. We've all been doing solid over the past, I would say, since the restart. I mean, yeah, it's only been 10 days, but it feels like so much longer than that. So I'm feeling good. You mentioned it. We're missing Scotty, but that man is so dedicated. He is on a beach in the Dominican Republic, and he still sent through picks. So those will be shared later on. And let's try to make sense of this week.
Yeah, so again, this will be a video only podcast just because Scotty does all the audio editing. He's got all the software and everything, so we apologize for that. The picks, locks of the week will be in written form for free for everyone on our Patreon page. We will link that in the video description. We will also link that on our Twitter page so that you can get our locks of the week. We are not running from our poor performance a couple weeks ago. We will have our locks back. They'll be up by Thursday, early Friday morning, so they're in before all the matches kick off. Italy kicks off on Saturday this week. We will start there in Naples. Napoli, Salernitana. Nick, Napoli down in ninth place right now. We've talked about it. They're struggling. Now this week, if you saw Osimhen hitting out at Kvaratskhelia agent, because Kvaratskhelia said, Kvaratskhelia wants to challenge himself with a team like Real Madrid or Bayern or whatever other teams he threw out there. And Osimhen's going to run to Saudi Arabia for the oil money, for the big money. Osimhen, of course, did not take kindly to that. I'm sure Napoli did not take kindly to that. I mean, this dressing room already seemed to be in a little bit of disarray. How much do you think this affects this match? Because this is their first match after that. Big favorites minus 330 to Salernitana plus 700. But yeah, it's getting, wow, it's getting interesting down there.
It would affect him more if he was there. So he is in Africa, right? So he's preparing with Nigeria for the Cup of Nations. So I think it affects it a little less, but I am going to call into question a little bit Osimhen's character. Now, I am not knocking the player that he is. This guy, we've said it on the podcast for 2 years now. He's one of the most complete strikers on the planet. He helped propel them to a Scudetto last year. None of that can be disputed. But this is the third or fourth time now that he's like stirred up some social media controversy.
Yeah.
I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but like, dude, why do you even respond? First of all, I was going to say, how did you get footage of this guy in Georgia speaking Georgian, giving an interview? Like, what does that even mean to anybody? But of course, I forgot we live in a social media age, so everything makes the rounds. But I don't know. Like, what's the point of
even
replying to it, right? Entertaining, exactly. So that definitely is a little strange. So I do want to call into character a little bit. Like, where's his head? Is that agent right? Maybe he's right. Is he more focused on Napoli? And did he lose a little bit of that focus because they sit in ninth and he knows he has a big international tournament to take part in right now? Or does he just want to go to Saudi Arabia potentially and make hundreds of millions of dollars? Hey, he has every right. He's earned that, right? Like, I don't. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It's just a strange thing for him to entertain. I think you put that beautifully. Said last week, I thought Mazzotti's job could be on the line if they lost that game. They lost the game last week. So
to a Torino side that does not score much, scored 3 goals in them.
Yeah, didn't look good. They've been bleeding goals lately. They're actually only +4 in goal differential on the season. They're all the way down to 9th place. I can't envision a world where they don't come out firing and at least look a lot better against Salernitana, who's in last place. But man, nothing would surprise me at this point with Napoli.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a derby for Salernitana. Salerno is in the Campania region, not far from Naples, so there's that little extra, I'm sure, fire for the Salernitana supporters who are trying to, first of all, avoid relegation. But if they could stick it to Napoli in Naples, that would certainly be a scalp for them. Even a point would be a scalp for them when you think about the way they've struggled this year. Napoli, here's the stat that jumped out at me, and I know they've been struggling. I couldn't remember all the score lines off the top of my head, and then I looked at the team streaks that we always look at SofaScore in those sites, And Napoli has no goals scored in their last 4 matches, three
Yeah.
in the league, and the one against Frosinone in the Coppa Italia. Um, that's concerning. And with Osimhen not there, they're still struggling to score. The Roma match, they had him for most of the match until he got red carded. Then without, and I'm pretty sure he was there for the Monza match. I think that was the last match he may have played. Definitely wasn't there for Torino. They got shut out. They got blanked again. We talked about Simeone doesn't get burned, which we're confused about. He's not getting very much time at all. A guy who's been very capable for a few Serie A sides. The thing that jumped out at me, and you mentioned there are usually goals in these Salernitana matches. Salernitana has not, as bad as they've been, they haven't just kind of rolled over and died for teams.
Mhm.
Juve last week, they ended up losing 2-1 after going up and then being red carded. You know, the Copa match, they did score first on Juve, but then they did ship six. That was different at the Allianz. But prior to that, Verona beat them up in Verona 1-0. Drew Milan 2-2 at home. So they do keep matches close. They kept the Bologna match close.
Yep.
They've kept the Lazio match close. I'm just kind of going through recent ones. The Napoli reverse fixture was a 2-0 loss to Naples back in early November. Goal scorers in that one were Raspadori and Elmas. So, do you expect a 2-0, revert like the reverse fixture, or something else jump out at you in this one that maybe you think it may turn out differently for them?
Yeah. Listen, I think they're gonna give it everything they have. Right? They need points at any and all costs. Certainly you mentioned it. Napoli hasn't scored in 4 games. I don't remember if that included the cup or not, but I know
Include the
that
cup, yeah.
it's okay. That's been bad. Salernitana over half a goal. It's sitting at minus 140 right now. It's not the best number, but it's not a bad look. I feel like they get a goal in this game. One thing that you mentioned that 4 games without a goal. We talked about Guevara last week. He was sitting at plus 350 anytime goal scorer. He's all the way down to plus 140.
Wow.
There's really not a good goal scorer number in this one for a Napoli player. They're all kind of in that plus 125 to plus 160 range. So I think the books are definitely expecting goals from Napoli. Just very, very interesting to see that big of a swing from week to week. Um, I don't know. I'd love to see something. I'm trying to, is there a creative way? Salernitana plus a goal and a half is minus 120.
That's what I was just going to call out when you
It's
were. Yeah,
okay.
that's the one I was looking at because if you think Salernitana scores a goal, does Napoli score three with the form
It's a
they're
great
showing?
question. Right.
Right?
That's a
I
great
could see a
question.
2-1 win. I could, potentially see a 2-0 win, but they haven't done a lot to convince me that can get done. Plus a goal and a half sometimes in these matches has been good to us. I think we played on Verona once and hit,
Yep.
and Frosinone another time and hit. This has that feel to it, just because of the way Napoli's struggling. Now they could
Yep.
they could figure it out, but I think at minus 120, it's not a bad risk.
Yep.
Not saying stake a huge, sum on it, but it might be something to keep an eye on. It might be something worth
Yep.
playing if you see lineups, if you see any more dissension in the press in the Napoli
Yep.
dressing room and things like that.
Yeah, I think those two are where we're leaning. And I would say that at this stage of the game, Napoli cannot be bet on until they prove they're
Yeah.
worthy of it. And I'm not saying take Salernitana or either of those two bets we gave out, but that's the way we're looking at it today. Napoli comes out and beats them 4-0 and then follow it up with a performance the following week where they're scoring some goals. Well, okay, then we
Right.
can consider a bet on them. But until then, that's the way I'm going.
Yeah, they've done nothing to deserve being minus 330 favorites, even at home, even against the last place team. To me, that's a bigger number than they deserve at the moment. And that
Agree.
could change quickly, like you said, but right now, I'm not trusting them. I'm leaning Salernitana plus a goal and a half if I take anything in this match.
I like it.
All right, moving on to the second match on Saturday, Genoa hosting Torino. This is a tighter one in the table. 10th place Torino coming off that big win against Napoli, like Nick just mentioned. Genoa, kind of surprising in 12th, 21 points. They've been playing pretty well. This is a pretty solid mid-table clash right now. Genoa hasn't lost in four, but they have conceded in 8 straight. Both of these teams have been under teams, under
Yep.
2.5. 6 out of 7 for Genoa, 4 out of 5 for Torino. Of course, the one for Torino we just mentioned was putting up 3 on Napoli. And the head-to-heads recently, first one of the first matches of the season, September 3rd, Torino beat Genoa 1-0. A couple of years ago, because Genoa was in B last year, it was all 1-0 again. I see a 0-0 a couple seasons
Yep.
ago. The trends seem to play to lower numbers in these
Yep.
matches. Um, pretty tight money line, plus 190 for Genoa, plus 185 draw, plus 160 Torino, which means the books are having a hard time separating the two. And the
Yep.
over under, get this, is set at 1.5. The over is minus 180. The under is plus 145. Under 1.5.
Yeah, I think the Asian total is a better one to look at for this one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's set at 2. Over 2 is minus 105. Under 2 is minus 130. So still favored to the under. I think that tells you everything you need to know about this game, right?
Yeah.
The books do not see Torino keeping it up. That being said, they've scored a lot lately. They've got points in 4 out of their last 5. Wouldn't shock me to see them put a couple goals in, at least one goal in. I don't mind an over or an under at 2 because you're getting kind of that protection with the even number, right? You'll get your money back if it lands on 2 exactly. Man, I'm going to tell you, the first one that jumped out to me here is Sanabria at plus 300. I think I'm not a huge fan of his, but I believe he scored last week. I've seen him, he's getting a ton of minutes. He's pretty much playing the full 90. It's not a bad look from the Torino side. I mean, Zapata's also there at plus 280. Not sure if he starts or not. And I kind of like Nikola Vlasic. We talked about him a couple times on the pod. He's plus 400. He's just a guy that has the ball an awful lot, makes things happen. I think those are kind of worthy long shots to take. Gudmundsson, plus 270
Yeah.
for Genoa. He's all the way down. So cashed on him last week at plus 400. Man,
Plus
so that
275, still a solid number though.
still solid, but I mean, that's cut almost in half because that just goes to show you that he has been the guy all season for them. Retegui is at plus 260. I'm not sure if he starts. He's been battling fitness. I think he only featured for about 20 last game. So goals are going to be at a premium. If you like a goal scorer, this isn't a bad game to take a shot with somebody. But man, I don't know. I mean,
And one thing I would keep an eye on in terms of goals, and especially you called out some Torino goal score props. When the lineups come out, if Dragusin is on his way to Spurs like he's supposed to be from Genoa, if he's not playing, that defense gets a lot weaker, gets a lot
yeah,
easier for Torino to score a goal. And I think there's even more value on whoever starts as striker, whether that be Sanabria or
yep,
Zapata. I do like Good Munson because if they're going to score a goal, Genoa, it's probably come through me. He's got 8 goals already this
yeah,
season.
unreal.
But the Dragusin transfer rumors to Tottenham, which look pretty concrete now and look like they're happening. His agent even said they turned down Bayern because they already had an agreement with Spurs. Becomes a really good move for Spurs, which we could talk about, especially with Scotty next week if it materializes. But
Yep.
it definitely takes away from Genoa's defense, and that I think 7 out of 8 under 2.5 maybe gets put a little more in jeopardy.
Yeah. And this is one of those games, classic games. So we're talking here. This is Wednesday night. You're probably watching this Thursday, Friday, maybe Saturday. It's one of those games where like you want to lock in early because there's value to be had. There's good numbers on the board right now. But man, do I really need to see lineups before I can make a final decision. I think that's what it comes down to because locking in Torino, even draw no bet at minus 120, I think is pretty solid with the form that they've been on. But Genoa's been great. They've really been way, way better than we thought they would be. I mean, they're in 12th place. Like you said, there's only 2 wins really that separate them. A win in this game could bring that down to 1. They're at home. Not an easy place to play for anybody. So
just ask Roma.
Yeah, just it can go either way. But today, gun to my head, I would say Torino draw no bet minus 120. Probably where I'm leaning. Might take a shot with a goal scorer, but this is a tough one to extract value out of because it's really a toss-up game.
Yeah. I do like the Torino draw no bet. They're coming in very confident after that win. They don't give up a lot. I don't think Genoa scores more than a goal. And like I said, if Dragusin ends up not playing because he is being transferred, I think there's even more value, and you might see that line move in the wrong direction from a betting standpoint.
Yeah, I kind of want to see but it's so funny that the over is so low, but the team total, like for either team to get a goal, is like minus 240. So I would have thought that'd be in the hundreds. Just little disparity there.
Yeah, and something, to maybe keep in the back pocket is if you see Dragusin's not playing, Torino team total right now at over 1.5 set at plus 210.
Yeah.
Like
Weird.
I could easily see them getting 2 if he's missing. He's been one of the best defenders in Serie A this year.
Yep. Agree.
All right. That moves us to, I guess, now that we're halfway through the season, we can officially start calling these relegation 6-pointers because these are 2 teams desperately fighting relegation. It is Verona and Empoli. Verona sits in 18th place at 14 points. Empoli sits in 19th place on 13 points. The biggest difference between these two when you look at them is goal differential. A team with a minus 10 goal differential like Empoli has doesn't necessarily sit so low in the table a lot of the time. Like Hellas, I mean, but they're down there in 18th, mainly because they don't score a lot. 16 goals scored, 26 conceded. Empoli scores way less. They have only scored 10 goals all season. Lowest scoring team by far in the league.
Yep.
16 is the second worst for Verona and Salernitana. They've conceded 33, which says a lot about this Empoli side and why they're in such trouble. It's definitely a relegation 6-pointer.
Yeah.
You know, they're both these teams are going to be desperate for a win, but I think they're also going to be very hesitant to lose this match, and that's what you usually get in these relegation 6-pointers. It is in Verona, so Verona pretty big favorite, plus 110 to Empoli plus 245, which takes the Verona bet even pretty much out of the picture for Verona. Empoli's is plus 150. Over under is set at 2.5, plus money on the over, plus 110, under minus 135. I personally like Verona at home in this match, but I don't know if I like them enough to bet them on the money line. That's the issue for me.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I'm not making this like a lock of the week. If this is a game you're looking to bet, I absolutely agree. First thing that jumped out, Hellas at home, money line plus 110. We've been hard on them. We faded them an awful lot. So you said everything you needed to with the stats. Empoli just doesn't score enough. I don't think they score enough in this game to be a threat. This is a game I would look at closer to kick. Take a look at card props. There could be a lot of cards in this one. Could be a penalty awarded.
And both
should be that
are under teams. Just to throw it out there while you're saying it. Look at like card props and things like that because goals are hard to come by. 4 out of 5 under for Hellas. 5 out of 6 under for Empoli. They have not scored a goal in 4, similar to Napoli.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I mean, listen, that under 2.5 at minus 135, also not the worst idea in the world.
So let me throw this at you. Last 2 seasons, head to head, their last 4 head to heads. Last one earlier this season, I think it was the first match day because it was August 19th. So it had to be the first match day. Verona 1-0 victory. The last 3 prior to that, 1-1 draws.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking under 2.5 is probably a good bet. Maybe even look at the Asian total and where you can get a push at under 2 because Empoli's not scoring much. I don't see many goals here.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I like the under. I like it. The draw also kind of jumped out at me, but when you said that you liked Verona, I was like, okay, I'm going to ride with you because that was the first thing I thought of. But not a terrible play to take a shot at the draw. Nobody's going to want to lose it, but I think Hellas at home has to have the advantage. So the odds seem correct to me in this one.
I agree. And both teams that score no is at even money right now. Both teams that score yes, minus 120. Yeah. So the books are on the fence too if they think both teams can score.
Yeah, it's funny. Enjoy doing it, but we're here trying to like come up with bets that we're probably 99% not taking because this is like just not a game to bet on. Unless you guys know something that we don't know. If you have an angle really in this game, man, hit us in the comments. Reach out to us on Twitter. I'd love to understand. We're just trying to give out options, but I don't know who's going to be watching or betting on this game. This to me is like a classic pass.
Yeah, this is not one I'm going to use my my good grace capital of my wife and son to take 2 hours out of my Saturday afternoon
right.
for sure.
Right.
Well, now time is more limited. It's not what I'm taking 2 hours out of my day to watch, and probably therefore not putting anything on it. But if you like Verona, if you like somebody, let us know. Hit us in the comments,
please.
But we will move on from this one after discussing that aspect of it. Next one up is Monza Inter. This is the late afternoon match, 2:45 Eastern time zone. So those first 2 we mentioned were actually both 9 a.m., which I didn't realize when we first recorded. They're starting to mix it up. I said, with these 4 Saturday matches again.
I like it.
Yeah. So Inter and Monza. This one is in Monza. Been a tough side to score against most of the time, except I think there was one match where we looked at the under and it did not come out. But Inter is coming off. What was the result? It was the 2-1 win over Verona. Verona gave them a very tough time last week. Ended up getting a red card, which cost them in the end. Missed penalty. The penalty. That's right. That's right. It was the red card. Inter scored, and then it was the missed penalty. There was no red card. Yeah, there was the whole Twitter uproar
A
from
lot of
Juve fans
controversy.
and
Yep.
others. Yes, about the no red on Inter on the goal. That ended up winning it. So there was definitely a lot of controversy. Monza is coming off of a 3-2 win against Frosinone. That's right. We had that one pegged for an
Yep.
under type match, and that was a 5-goal thriller out of the blue. Um, let's see the lines in this one. We have Monza plus 500 at home, Inter minus 220 on the road. Kind of expected there, considering Inter being top of the table. Over set at minus 125. The under even money for 2.5 goals. What do you make of this one, Nick? Inter hasn't been playing their best in recent weeks. Did drop points 2 weeks ago. Almost dropped points last week. It was Genoa on the road. We mentioned Genoa. That's who was on the road that they dropped
Yep.
points to. They have been tough at the Marassi. What do you make of Inter here?
So I'm glad you said that. Was hanging out today, friend of the podcast, good guy, longtime guest. We've been guests on his show, Calcio Connection. Alex Dono, shout out him. And we were just, talking about the state of the league, teams. He's a huge Inter fan, and he said Inter look exhausted. And I thought about it, and I'm like, holy shit, he's right. Like, this is a team where we've talked about for 2.5 years now that they're so deep. They have, whatever it takes. They're going to have this deep run. They should win a Scudetto. They made it to the final. And it's true. But you just said it without even knowing what I was going to say, right? Like, they haven't played their best. And we're seeing a lot of guys get run down because they do have some injuries. So that depth starts to take a toll. The midfield three seem to play every single minute. And now with Lautaro, who picked up a knock a couple weeks back, he hasn't been the same since. Thuram playing pretty much every minute up front. Now you're starting to see Arnautovic integrated. Sanchez, I'm guessing they're doing whatever they possibly can to limit his minutes on the field because we know what we can give it. He can give at this point. There's going to be a stretch, and maybe we're in it, where Inter start to not play their best, where those goals start to dry up. I mean, Lautaro has been fantastic, but it's impossible that he scores every single game, right?
Yeah.
He's going to go through a little bit of a rough patch. I'm not saying it happens in this game, but man, if Monza on the spread, like, kind of, is this a game where we take a shot to fade Inter? Because we're certainly not laying minus 220.
No.
And I don't think I want to take the -1 goal. I just don't think I do. So it's kind of the way I'm leaning.
So you're looking at the Monza +1 or +1.25 here?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, again,
Plus
I
one and a
really
half is kind of out of play at -170. So
I think so. I want to understand who's scoring. I think +1.25 at -135, very, very, very playable. Because even if Inter, they win by 2, you're still getting half of that back. So I don't know. Inter has to kind of prove it to me. They're in that same boat where we watched them dominate for the first 2 months of the season. Now they're taking their foot off the gas a little bit, maybe by necessity.
yeah, and that speaks to volumes to how many matches these teams play, because Inter is on paper the deepest team in the league. I think we know that, but I think the fatigue is also why Juve has been able to keep up, right? Even though Inter is the deepest team in the league, most talented team in the league on paper, the matches catch up, right? We've said it a couple times. Juve not playing in Europe is a big advantage, and you see why in this situation, right? It really helps teams. The year Milan won the Scudetto, I believe 2 years ago, they had dropped out of Europe at this point in the season, and it really was able to propel them ahead of Inter, who lasted, I think, to the quarterfinals of the Champions League that season or whatever it was. It is definitely an advantage, and it's a disadvantage sometimes, even if you're a deep side. I see it every week with Roma. They're picking up injuries. They're playing a lot of matches. They can't do it every week, and then they're playing 4 or 5 tough matches in a row. You just don't have the legs sometimes. And I think that is what Inter is experiencing. Monza is a tough team to score on most of the time, and it could be tough on them in this one. Last year, Monza took 4 points off Inter. So they're definitely not going to be a fear factor.
It's that. Yeah, the only thing that worries me a little bit about Monza, and that my assessment is more so on Inter playing a sluggish game than it is Monza being great. I mean, you mentioned that they scored 3 goals
Yeah,
last week. Good for them. But those 3 goals represented like
like a quarter of their goals of
30%
the
of their
season.
goal
Yeah.
output, right? So they don't score a ton. 19 games played, what, 20 scored, 19 against, or 19 scored, 20
19
against,
scored,
something.
20 against, so they're averaging a goal a game.
Yeah, so it's not to say that Monza is going to come out and score 2 against Inter. It's more to say I don't really see Inter putting more than 2 past Monza.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of where I'm at on it. I think Inter is traditionally a good team for corners. Check your corner market. If you can get a team total around 4.5, 5, that's not a bad look. But I don't know. Let's see. This is a wait for lineup, see what the line looks like, make a decision at that point.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not too high on Inter right now to lay 220 at all,
Yep.
or even play them at -1.5 or something like that. Thinking they're, we've done that. I've done that this season as a lock. Inter to win by 2 or more, and it
Yep.
pays out. I don't think this is a situation for that. All right, moving to Sunday, early match. Lazio hosting Lecce. Lazio played in the Coppa Italia today. Congratulations, Nick, to your victory. And what I heard was didn't get to watch much of it since it was during the workday. Not the prettiest victory, but a victory nonetheless for Lazio. I have to admit, Jose Mourinho is pretty much owned by Maurizio Sarri since they both moved to the Italian capital. I will admit that. And not even begrudgingly because it's kind of becoming clear
Facts are
now.
facts, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So Lazio has to fairly quick turnaround since it's an early Sunday match. Kind of
Yep.
normal for these teams that play in Europe, but they get the early match -165 at home. Lecce +450 on the road. This is a match where the over is set at 2.5 and it's +120. The under is -155. Another match where these lines that we've been seeing the over-unders these
Tough.
2 weeks that we've been doing this, they're tough, and it almost
Tough.
feels like I said last week, a throwback to the old Serie A days where you would get a lot of 1-0s, 1-1s,
Yep.
2-0s, not like we've seen in recent seasons where you're getting a lot of goals. Lecce has not been as great lately. They're now down to 13th in the table,
Yep.
but they have been a thorn in some of these bigger team sides early
Lazio.
this season. Lazio, one of them, that was their big win really from the first half of the season. Can they get it done again at the Olimpico? Or is this where you just say, you know what, Lazio's the better side. They're going to win at home. Like, do you trust Lazio right now in this match?
No, I still don't. I want to, but I still don't. I think needs to be said they didn't look spectacular today against Roma. I think it was just a product of Roma being worse. Not to say Lazio didn't deserve the win because I think they did. They certainly generated more chances. They scored the only goal of the match, so good, right? We're moving on. Lazio has won 3 straight in the league. That's probably the first time all year they've done that. That's an accomplishment. Lecce has not won in their past 3 with 2 losses and a draw. So things kind of line up, but goals are not coming easy for Lazio. That's a real concern for me in betting this game. In the first game of the year, or first or second game when they played Lecce already, they were up 1-0, cruising 60th, 70th minute, and they gave up 2 goals.
Mm-hmm.
Right? 2 goals in like 5 minutes, and they didn't look like they were even going to come close to tying it up. So something like that worries me. I think, not that I expect Lecce to come out and score 2, but Lazio seemed to score a goal and become disinterested. And that's something I've complained about for 3 years under Sadi. If this is a -130 game, I probably look at it a little more seriously for a bet. But at -165, I don't like it. I don't even like a Lazio team total because we can count how many times this year they've scored in the first 15 minutes of a game to never get that second goal. It's burned me probably on 3 or 4 locks already this season. So I'm happy for Lazio. They're picking up after a ridiculously slow start. They're advancing in the cup. They advanced in the Champions League. I have toned down my Saudi slander a lot, but they're still nowhere near where they need to be or worthy of a bet.
Yeah, so I looked back just to see trends. I try to keep an eye on those things. Interestingly enough, in these head-to-heads between Lazio and Lecce, Lecce is one of those yo-yo teams that bounces back and forth from Serie B to Serie A. So there are some gaps in years, so it stretches over a longer number of years than most head-to-heads would. 9 matches head-to-head in most cases is 4.5 seasons, right? This dates back over a decade because of Lecce's time in Serie B, but 9 straight matches these two teams have both scored in a match head to head is very interesting to me. Because Lecce has never been a team that's even threatened mid-table in their time in Serie A. If they're surviving, they're surviving because they're like 16th or something. Um, and since they've been back in Serie A, which came last season for the first time in a couple of years, they have actually taken 7 out of 9 points off Lazio. 2 wins down at the Via del Mare
Yep.
in Puglia, and then a 2-2 draw against Lazio in May at the Olimpico, where Lazio had to get a late goal to salvage a point in that one. So
Both
I
teams to score
know
plus 120.
that's the one I
Plus
was
110. Excuse me. Yeah.
that's the one I was looking at, where I'm like,
Yeah.
if I'm playing trends and I'm playing a little bit of a hunch here, I think this could be the one to play, because at that number it might be worth a shot. I don't trust Lazio on the money line like you.
Yep.
I also don't like to bet Lazio on the money line because it goes against my personal interest. But even when it's there and I think it's good, I do take it as any smart gambler would, right? But in terms of like trends, I mean, you look at even the most recent ones where you don't have to go back a decade, 3 straight matches, both teams scoring plus 110, and the books have the no at minus 140.
Yep.
It might be worth a shot.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that's the only really solid bettable thing that I see right in front of us. So I'm with you.
All right, Nick, your second team apart over the last 6 months.
Longer
No,
than
a
that.
little more than 6 months, but the last season or so. Bologna, looking for a bounce back. Man, last week, tough one. I know I put a pretty decent wager on them on the Friday match. You said they should have won that match. That was, remind me, who was that against head to head? That was against
Udinese.
Cagliari. Udinese. It was one of those teams. They're at Cagliari this weekend. They are plus 140 in the money line. Cagliari at home plus 195. The over under in this one is set at 2.5, and the over is plus 140. The under minus 185. Again, man, if you could pick the right one that's going to have 3 goals or more, you can make some plus money in one of these matches. But
it's going to happen, right?
I think you and I both like this as a bounce back spot for the team from Emilia Romagna.
Yeah, I do. Listen, back to back, maybe 3 or 4 now straight performances that have been, I don't want to say unexpected, but they've come down back to reality off of the big high that they started the season on. So last week, Udinese, gave up the early goal, not the early goal. They gave up the first goal. They tied it. They dominated the game from that point on, had several chances to win it. Didn't go our way. They had a 0-0 after 120 to Fiorentina in the Coppa Italia yesterday or the day before.
It was actually Genoa, Nick, the 1-1. Udinese was a loss 2 weeks ago, 3-0.
It's all scrambled in my head. Sorry, Genoa. But any case, wrong team, right outcome of the game. With Fiorentina, right, 0-0 after 120. So, listen, this team has gotten a lot of respect. They've had the best first half of a season they ever could have hoped to have. They have real deficiencies, and those deficiencies are scoring goals. It's up front. Their goalkeeper is outstanding. Their defense, Calafiori has really been that guy, got the move from Roma, changed his position. He's been outstanding. A lot of other pieces have stepped up. Their defense is good. They're very structurally sound. They're midfielders. They got a lot of these, Austrian, Germanic guys in there, Posh and Abisher and the Ferguson, who's he's Scottish, but a lot of these guys that are just very good, structurally sound. They miss a lot in that final third. Orsolini has not looked good this year. He's had a number of injuries. Not the reason he hasn't looked good, but a reason. You have Salamakers starting on the other wing. Any team that starts him game in and game out, I don't think we can take them too seriously because he's terrible. I just don't understand how he has a starting spot. I don't know how he started for Milan or even got minutes on that team. Same goes for here. Xerxes is very, very, very good, immensely talented, works very hard, has all of the physical tools. He is just not a traditional number 9 striker, and that's the position he's playing in. So I think they need to switch something up, maybe change formations. You don't want to go away from what's working because they don't give up a lot of goals, but they really just don't score enough, and they can't seem to beat these teams that they should be beating when you're out there getting results against Lazio and Roma and Napoli and Inter. You can't lose to Cagliari and Genoa and Udinese. So this to me is kind of like a make or break for what's going to set them up for
Yeah.
the rest of the year. I mean, it's early to say that, but like, are they the team that was going to maybe we thought was going to hang around and then they're going to finish in 8th or ninth place? Or are they going to make a serious claim for a European spot? And they need to do that by winning this game, taking 3 points. Man, I just talked an awful lot, but plus 140 on the money line should be good. Minus 140, draw no bet if you subscribe to everything I just said and don't really believe in Bologna just yet. One of those two.
It's that, and another one that jumped out at me as I'm looking at the team streaks. Cagliari tend to concede first. A lot of the time, they've been first to concede in 6 out of 7. The number on first team to score Bologna is minus 120. Not a bad number there if you think they can get that one. Because if they get that one, they probably get the win in the match as well.
Yep,
They're
agree.
pretty good at locking it down. Their defense has performed really well. They've only conceded 16 times in 19 matches. But you're right, the scoring is tough to come by. 22 goals scored tells me that there's definitely some of those 0-0 draws mixed in because they've only won 8 matches, but they've only
Right.
lost 3. It's 8-8-3, which is what has them only a point out of a Champions League spot right now, which could actually become a Champions League spot if Italy's coefficient is good. On the road, they are not as good. It's a lot of draws, which is the only thing that makes me nervous
Italia
on the
is
money
tough
line.
to play there.
Yeah, tough to go there. A lot of teams go to Sardinia and have a little bit of trouble. So maybe taking the draw no bet and taking a lesser payout is the way to go. I do think they bounce back. But you do have to worry a little bit about being on the road and their road form. They're one of those teams that's kind of happy getting a point on the road. At home this season, Cagliari hasn't been great, 3-3-3. But that first score, it kind of jumps at me because then they could score, and if they concede and it ends up a 1-1 draw, you don't lose out. Might be something to keep in mind too, just based on those trends for Cagliari.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, moving on to the next match on Sunday. It's Fiorentina hosting Udinese. Fiorentina, like Nick said, in the Copa, 0-0 for 120 minutes with Bologna. Beat Bologna on the penalty kicks, 5-4. Went down to the last kickers, and they prevailed. They are minus 160 at home. Udinese plus 400. Fiorentina is holding on to the last Champions League spot right now. Is this a spot where you buy the Viola to win a match that they should win on paper and continue their march to a top 4 finish if you believe in them?
Yeah, listen, I'm hard on Fiorentina. I'm not a huge believer in the coach. I'm not a huge believer in the players that they have. Guys like Icone getting starts year in and year out. He's nothing special. Forwards have definitely been hit or miss. Should they win? Absolutely. Will we bet minus 160? We won't. I think this game, of all the games we've talked about, I have the least opinions on. This is a pass from me. This is just not the game I want to get involved with. The numbers aren't good no matter where I look.
Yeah, and they're not a team that scores a lot to even like them minus one on the Asian total or anything with the
Right.
spread. They tend to be an under team, and the over under is set at 2.5, but it's geared toward the under at minus 135. The over is plus 105. But Udinese goes over a lot of the time, which is what scares me. Like maybe Fiorentina gets a 2-1 win. So I don't know if I even
Possible.
touch those, even though it's even though the minus 135 is still a pretty playable number at over 2.5, I don't think I would touch it. I agree with you. I think for the most part, this is a pass. Maybe it's a live bet scenario where if you're watching the match and you see Fiorentina's, dominating the match, and by the 30th minute, that number comes down to something closer to like minus 120. Maybe you take a shot there.
Yep.
But I'm not touching it probably pre-match at minus 160. It's got to come down for me to even
Agree.
consider it. All right. The biggest match of the weekend on paper and in terms of standings is Milan hosting Roma. Milan has kind of put themselves in a comfortable third position after a few rough weeks of the Pioli out. Agenda from some people. His defenders.
Big agenda.
Big agenda from the detractors, the defenders, including some of our one of our big listeners, Michael Lisi. I saw him coming to the Pioli defense after another win last week.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, coming to the defense, and for good reason, because now when you're comfortably in third place, why change things up, right? 39 points, third place, 6 ahead of Fiorentina, who's 4, so they're pretty comfortable there ahead of the scrum that's ensuing below them. Roma 8th place, 29 points, so not far off of 4th, but it feels like they're a lot further off than they are. It's just a mess over there. The big thing for Roma, I can speak as a Roma fan. The only team they've beaten in the top 9 so far in the first half of the season, Napoli, right? The only team that's maybe more of a mess in terms of how their season's gone so far. And and they have not been good against Milan at all in recent weeks, or not recent weeks, recent seasons, I should say. Um, Milan has not lost in 8 straight against Roma, but at the same time, they're without a clean sheet in 7, which is an interesting stat to me that Milan has not been able to keep Roma out the back of the net during that streak of no losses. Um, Very interesting to me. They played early in the season. It was a 2-1 win, I believe, for Milan, and to open things up in match week 3. They're plus 110 at home. Roma plus 245 on the road. And the over under in this one is set at 2.5. The over set at plus 120. The under minus 155. Now, this is interesting to me because I know Roma plays a lot of unders, but
Mm,
Milan plays a lot of overs.
yep.
And in the first time they played head to head, it was an over match.
Yep.
Like plus 120 to me is really good value for this match, even if Roma is struggling to score at times.
Yeah, so you mentioned it. There's going to be a game somewhere where we're getting 3 goals at plus money. This could be that game because Milan has been pretty much automatic for
Yeah.
overs. And good for them. And if Scotty were here, he would call them Chances FC because they do generate an awful lot of offense. They should have way more goals for how many good, dangerous chances they get. Listen, we've been, I don't want to say wishy-washy. That's not the right term, but we've been talking about different possible bets for each game. This is a game where I have a very strong opinion. I think based on what I saw out of Roma today, based on what Milan has been doing to pretty solid competition outside of Inter, plus 110 at home, it seems to me like one of the more straightforward bets of the weekend. I think it's Milan's game to lose. Roma just does not score. That's the way I'm leaning in this one.
Yeah, they both played in the Coppa Italia today. Both lost in the Coppa Italia quarterfinals. Roma to Lazio, as we mentioned. Milan to Atalanta. Um,
2-1.
but I 2-1. Yeah, I still think this is Milan's match to lose. Like you said, the recent head-to-head history tells us that. Um, but yeah, I do like the over, and I think this is a game where I wouldn't personally bet on Milan because I'm not going to bet against my own team. Like that. That to me, is not something I do personally. Um, I know it could probably cushion a blow of another loss against a top competition. I look for other ways to bet it if I'm going to bet it. Sometimes I'm too optimistic on my side and will take a draw no bet or something. But I do think that the over is in play here because I'm looking back at Milan's matches. Chances FC, I think that's gone because yes, they lost 2-1 today. But if I go back to the beginning of December, I'm going to read you off their score lines. I mean,
Hit me.
3-1 win over Frosinone, 3-2 loss to Atalanta, 2-1 win over Newcastle, 3-0 win over Monza, 2-2 with Salernitana, 1-0 win over Sassuolo, 4-1 over Cagliari, 3-0 over Empoli, and then the one goal loss today. So in only 2 of those matches, they scored less than 2 goals, and
Yeah,
both of
only
those
one hit
matches
the
are
under.
over. Yeah,
Only one hit the under.
the
Yeah.
1-0, right? Just the 1-0 loss to, or 1-0 win rather over Sassuolo, and that's surprising because Sassuolo usually scores. That would be the one you would have pegged for an over, right? But
Right.
recent history between these sides, Milan's unbeaten in 8 of those matches, and like recently, only one of those was a 1-1 draw. It was a 2-1 earlier this season, 2-2 last season. At the San Siro, 3-1 win for Milan in the first match against Roma, where Roma had a couple red cards. 2-1 win for Milan. 2-1 win for Milan, 3-3 draw. Like, there's a lot of goals when these teams play for whatever reason. Even when Mourinho's been here, the 5 matches that Mourinho's been here, only one of them's going under.
And here's my question to you. You're much, much, much closer to it than I am. At what point does Roma switch up their strategy and go for it? I mean, what do they have to lose at this point? When do they start
Yeah.
trying to actually
I
score
mean,
goals?
the crazy thing for me, and it probably goes for you as a Lazio supporter too, and even Napoli fans have to feel a little bit good about the fact that they're only 5 points off a Champions League spot. Is
Sure.
if Roma won 1 or 2 more of those head-to-heads against the top 6, top 7 type teams, they're right in the mix with Fiorentina for that last Champions League spot. Um, they have to win some of these matches. I think Inter and Juve could be the ones. Not that you punt because they played with Juve a couple weeks ago and were right there, lost 1-0. They lost to Inter 1-0, but it was like Inter dominated that match.
Right.
Roma had no chance of scoring in that match. They were playing for a 0-0 at the San Siro in that one. Most of the time, Roma's in these matches. They do need to do something. The problem I'm noticing, and I didn't get to watch much of today's match, but you said as soon as Dybala came off the pitch at halftime, they're probably trying to save his legs for this one a little bit. It's brutal, right? And he missed quite a few matches through injury, like he usually does, unfortunately. Talented guy, but he gets injured a lot. There's always players like that. Um, they don't have anybody besides him and Lukaku that scare people. And Lukaku, when he's not on the pitch, especially, is not getting the service that he needs because the wingbacks, you're playing a 3-5-2 essentially. The wingbacks can't whip in good crosses. So if
Right.
you can't whip in crosses to a striker like Lukaku, how else are you getting him the ball? It's usually Dybala on 1-2s or playing him in on the ground, and then Lukaku does what he does best and finishes goals. But if Dybala's injured or Dybala has to come off because he's fatigued or whatever, Mourinho's trying to protect him a little bit for a match like this, they lose that cutting edge. Pellegrini is not in the form he was 2 years ago. They signed Awar, who's hurt now, but he did not look good prior to that. He was supposed to be, some people were saying he would take Pellegrini's spot in an instant, and he has not even been better than Pellegrini at all. The wingbacks need to be able to whip in crosses if you're playing this way, and that's a problem. That's been a problem for them. I don't know how you change it up with the personnel they have. Here we are. Llorente might not play. He didn't play today. The young kid that's on loan from Juve, 18 years old, might get the start again with Mancini and maybe Cristante or whoever they put back there, because Ndika's at the AFCON and he's been great for them, which also leads me to believe Milan will score at least a goal, if not two.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's tough to see where Roma wins this unless they get Dybala magic or Lukaku just can penetrate that Milan backline, which has looked shaky at times this year. I do see the over though. I think that to me is where the play is.
No, I agree. Listen, high on Milan, obviously high on them before the season, had a future that, that's not going to work out, but high on them. Early on they were dominating. They got off to a great start. We talk with our friend Martino a lot, who one of the smartest, sharpest, most honest Milan fans I know. Him and Mike, I put them neck and neck, good dudes. He, every week if I'm talking to him, hey, dude, what do you like this week? Just Milan over, just pencil it in. And you just rattled it off, right? Like it has been absolutely automatic. So I am so with you on that. I also like Milan to win. If you're feeling adventurous, maybe you do a little same game parlay, you double both of those, get a good number. Not saying you have to do that, but I really don't see them dropping this one at home.
And if you like Milan to win and you want to even play the total safer, like you think they could get a 2-0 win because Roma has been struggling to score, you can get Milan and over 1.5 as a game parlay that DraftKings already has built at plus 185.
There you go.
Yeah. So I hope it turns out differently for Roma. That's why, to me, I like the over. Maybe Roma can get a surprise all of us and get a 2-1 win. But this is a number I might lock in early in the week here at plus 120.
I like it.
All right. Serie A doing some funky things with the schedule because of the Thursday Coppa Italia match between Frosinone and Juve. Atalanta Frosinone is actually on Monday. Atalanta, coming off that win today against Milan, is at home, minus 260. Frosinone plus 550. The total set in this one is way geared toward the over at minus 160 on the over 2.5. Under is plus 125. Frosinone has had some pretty good results that have kept them, a little bit above the relegation zone, 15th on 19 points, 5 clear. They do concede quite a few goals. They've actually conceded 34, which is the second worst in the league, but they score better than the teams around them, which has kind of kept them afloat with 25 goals scored. And it talks to why this match is set toward the over in a lot of ways, because Atalanta, we know, can do a lot of scoring on themselves. So one thing to keep in mind, Frosinone, no losses in 3. Atalanta, no losses in 4. Something's probably got to give. I don't think I see a draw coming in this one.
Yep. I agree.
What do you see in this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is a really tough one. I think Frosinone, they either have a great performance or an absolute stinker. So a lot has to hinge on whether you think they come to play and score a goal or not. I mean, as something of a parlay piece, if you're looking to throw in Frosinone team total over half a goal, that's minus 165. If you're looking to build the same game parlay or use it with something else, I don't think that's bad. But Atalanta, listen, they've been hot, and they've been hot without really scoring a ton. I feel like their defense has been good. They're right around a goal a game. And we know that with 7 losses. So
yeah,
you have to figure in those losses, they were probably scoring in most of them. So they've given up 2 goals probably on average in some of those losses. Let's say 1.5 goals on average in some of those losses. So in the wins, they've been really, really good. You have to like them in this one. Certainly not enough to bet. minus 260. I don't like them on the spread. This to me is probably a pass because you wonder, do they have a little bit of cup hangover? But I do think they win the game. Just nothing I really like that's jumping out at me.
One thing I noticed that is intriguing if you think Frosinone can score a goal but probably not win this match is the both teams have scored no draw plus 140.
Yeah, and
Because
that's not even that
Frosinone,
great. I mean, that's
no,
a bet that's usually plus 200 in other games.
and it's probably not so great just because the over is so, um, you know, minus 160 or whatever I said it was. Like
Right.
you're not getting a lot of value there. It's just all you're really doing is eliminating Atalanta winning 3-0 in that scenario.
Right.
um, or 4-0 or more, or whatever it might be. So yeah, probably a pass here, because Atalanta can be so hot and cold at times, and Frosinone can maybe surprise people and get a goal, or maybe they can sneak out a draw or something. But it's not something I'm gonna stake too much on, if
Yep.
anything at all. All right, last match of the weekend. The match day is actually on Tuesday. Juve getting favorable scheduling again in some ways, getting such a long break. They are playing on Tuesday, hosting Sassuolo, who one of the most shocking unders last weekend. I mean, we
Yep.
mentioned the shocking under against Milan. Fiorentina 1-0 win over them, right? I think was how it turned out, or was it a 0-0? No, it was a 0-0, right? Because I think we had taken Fiorentina money line as like one of our best bets of the weekend, and lo and behold, nothing was scored in that match. Shocking for sure with the way Sassuolo usually ships goals. They are, we mentioned it last week, sitting at 14th place on 19. One of the worst starts for them in their time in Serie A. How do you see them perform against second place Juventus at the Allianz? I know Juve will have to play Thursday, but having till Tuesday to rest probably not much of an issue for them.
So they tend to show up in games like this. The first thing that jumped out to me is both teams to score at minus 105. You're asking a lot to get a goal against Juve in some games. You're asking a lot for Sassuolo to score because they haven't looked very good. Berardi hasn't scored, and I can't tell you how long. But is this a game where he pops up out of nowhere and pisses people off? I think it might be.
Tends to be the type
Juve's
of
been
game
a
he does.
right,
No goal scorer props out for this one because it's too far off
right.
yet.
So Juve's been a wagon for us. They've been deservedly second place. Their team total is not even playable, and this one's minus 190. This is we're going to bet on it because it's the only game and it's on Tuesday.
And what
Both
else is
teams
going
to
on
score
Tuesday
is
afternoon, right?
right.
Besides Juve
Both teams to
Sassuolo.
score is kind of where I'm leaning right now. Maybe Juve winning over 2.5 at plus 110 would be the other way I look at it.
Yeah, it's tough because, like you said, Sassuolo is not the same Sassuolo in terms of scoring goals as when they
Defense is
had
terrible.
the Raspadoris and the Scamacas and even Fratesi in the midfield. The defense still stinks, but Juve doesn't tend to score and I'm saying this after they scored 6 goals in the Copa last week against Salernitana. They tend not to score too often, right? It's like 2-1 against Salernitana. 2 goals here, goal there, 2 goals. They get results, but they're not the team that usually pours it on. And I don't know how much I trust Sassuolo to get a goal at the Allianz against a Juve defense that's been really good this season. Um, that's my biggest thing to worry about. Juve has no losses in 15 straight matches. Um, yeah, I don't see them losing for sure.
Yeah, it's
It's
Juve
even the
winning
game.
over 2.5, Juve
Yeah,
winning under 3.5, something in that
yeah,
realm.
something
Those
like
are
that.
both kind of like even money ish. Definitely wait to see. Look, Vlahovic probably starting because he scored last game. He's looked
Yeah.
a little bit better. I don't know who's going to start next to him. Kiesa, I think, is still hurt. They obviously have a game between now and then, so that factors into it.
Was it Illing who scored the other day?
Illing, nice goal. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
been looking good, and he's been looking good because Kostic is so bad that anybody going in there looks good. But I think Illing has promise. Milik's gotten minutes. Yildiz, the young Turkish kid from Bayern or wherever he came from, he's looking really good. Keane, I'm not sure if he's hurt or if he's pissed off, or there were rumors about him getting
Yeah,
loaned.
I
I
think
don't really
he's
know
about
what's
done over
happening.
there.
So I still don't know what to make of Juve. Like, are they going to grind this out 1-0, or are they going to grind it out 3-1? And just fly by because Sassuolo allows it. Weird game, but both teams to score kind of jumped out at me first.
Oh wow! And I just looked back. The reverse fixture was a 4-2 Sassuolo win at the Mappe, or very early in the season, back in September,
So
match day 5. But um, that yeah, I did not expect to see that.
it's
This
their
was a
only
match
loss.
where everybody's. Oh yeah, that was. Yeah, everybody scored. Laurent scored, Berardi scored, Pinamonti scored, and then
Yeah.
there was a Gatti own goal very late
Okay.
to kind of
So
put it
who you
away.
think
But
they're going to get up for that one? This one?
I think Juve gets up for it.
Yep.
Looking back now that I realize that, I think they do get up for it. I do agree that I think it's got to be one of those ones where you do a game parlay. I would probably feel more comfortable with under 3.5 than over 2.5 for a lot of reasons that we just mentioned. But then this kind of like almost talk myself off it. Yeah, this is one like wait and see what happens tomorrow. Do
Yeah.
the lines move at all? But it's almost so much of a lock. It's tough to figure out how they're gonna lock it up, so to speak.
Right. Right.
Yeah. All right, that wraps up Italy. We will have our locks. We will pick our 6 favorites probably from this group of matches that we just talked about. Put that on our Patreon page. Nick has a couple things he noticed in the Premier League this weekend that he likes. The Premier League is kind of in one of those weird weekends where there's cup matches and there's some Premier League matches.
Yep.
So it's not really a full match day, but we have 5 matches. Burnley hosting Luton Town, Chelsea hosting Fulham, Newcastle hosting Man City, Everton hosting Aston Villa, and Man United hosting Spurs. Anything jump out at you here, Nick? I do see Luton Town at plus 295 at Burnley. That kind of jumped out at me a little bit,
Yep.
mainly because Burnley's been so bad. I know Luton Town
Yes.
is a little bit better at home, which is kind of where they've done their surprises on teams, but I don't know. Like I
No.
don't trust
So hey,
Burnley. Maybe
listen.
a draw no
I
bet scenario.
I don't want to take credit for it, but you just said it and Scotty said it. So I'm going to spoil one of Scotty's locks here because the man did do the work from swim up bar in a pool in the Dominican Republic. He sent this through. Luton Town plus half a goal at Burnley was one of his locks. And he says they've been playing really decent and Burnley just look absolutely terrible. This very likely could be a draw. So getting half a goal, with Luton Town, I think that's a good way to look at it. And I think the 3 of us are probably in agreement.
Yeah, I agree. Minus 120, I think, is a great number to get half a goal. And you know what? If they lose, they lose. But I think the fact that you can get a draw and get a cash here, I think, is a great number on a team that's been the better of the 2 sides, relative term, considering where they are in the table. But Luton Town actually has like hope for survival. I don't see that for Burnley
Yeah,
right now.
definitely.
All right, so that's definitely one that jumps out. I know you had one in the one of the bigger matches,
Yeah.
which is
Hey,
Spurs
listen,
United.
let's quickly run through. I mean, we got Chelsea, Fulham, Chelsea minus 160, Fulham plus 425. I don't trust Chelsea. Chelsea does not get any of our money
No.
ever. So that is an avoid game for me.
They just
Fulham
lost
was
to that was MLS to Middlesbrough yesterday in the cup, right?
sure was.
Yeah.
I mean, do I think they bounce back? Probably, but certainly not paying for it. Newcastle City, Newcastle plus 450, City minus 175. Newcastle is in very, very bad form. City, they're going to look to keep pace and challenge for the title. This is a game that they're going to want to win away from home, which is tough. Would love to see Newcastle get something out of it, but their season's looking like a lost cause right now, especially if they drop 3 here.
Yeah, I can't see a scenario where I can trust Newcastle to get a result. I can certainly see them getting a result because City has been shaky at times this year. I just can't stake any money on it. Even with Newcastle at such a big number, like it's tempting to say like, oh, I'm going to throw something on like, plus half a goal or something at home. Maybe they get a result, but I
don't
don't see how it happens. Even plus a goal is minus 120, but are they able to even get that push for you if need be? Like I don't know.
Yeah, and if they drop this game, they lose 3 points, and they've lost 4 out of 5 in the league.
Yeah.
They lose this game, they're in the bottom half of the table. I mean, that's a really steep drop off from 4th place.
Yeah, Champions League is a far cry from qualification like they had last year. This is not going well for them. Those terms, they're completely out of Europe at this point. Yeah, I mean, this is all they have to play for at this point, but I don't see how it happens here, and they're gonna have to hope to close. Actually, they have the FA Cup left. I apologize. They still have that, but are they gonna have to make a deep run in that? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if you lose this one, Champions League is definitely dead, and you're probably trying to at least claw your way to one of those European spots for
Yep.
even Conference League just to keep that
Uphill
European,
battle. Yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of good teams in front of you to try to do it. So interesting one there.
One of those teams is
Maybe
Villa, Nick. They're one of those teams that's kind of overtaken Newcastle. This is an interesting one to me because they looked so poised to hang around, and then those last couple matches, man, like before Christmas,
brutal.
here they are. They did beat Burnley to close out the 2023 calendar year, but that loss to United that they were up 2-0 in, that they lost me some money in that one because they were up 2-0. I was feeling really good about that one. They lost
It's
3-2.
funny how we always
Yeah,
remember our losses, right?
yeah, they jump right out. Sheffield United 1-1 draw at home where they had been like pretty much impenetrable. They gave up a late goal and then scored an even later one to grind out that draw. I mean, they're kind of losing their footing a little bit and kind of need something here. They're still second in the table with less games played than Man City, but it doesn't feel like they're second
Right.
anymore just because I guess it happened with this break in the middle for the FA Cup and all this. Um, but it's just like I feel like they need a win here at Everton,
Yeah.
but Everton's been tough.
Dude.
Everton's been really tough, and even with that deduction of 10 points, they're still out of the relegation zone.
And it's a tale of two Evertons, man, because they were playing really well. They got that 10-point deduction. They kind of rallied around it and were winning games, right?
Yeah.
But then they've dropped 3 straight. They've
Yeah.
like fallen back down to Everton reality. And that's what scares me a little bit. They're at
And no
home.
wins in 5.
That's a big issue. They are at home. The money line Villa plus 145, Everton plus 175. This is almost a spot you have to take a stab with Villa. If Villa are serious, if they're going to make Champions League, they need to win this game, and you're hardly going to get them at plus 145 the rest of the season, right? If they carry on with that form, especially against a team that's in 15th place. So I think Villa is almost a must bet in this scenario, especially with Everton losing 3 straight. But man, at home, I could see a fucking draw in this game very easily.
How do you feel about Villa draw no bet at minus 135? Is that number
Yeah,
good enough for you?
that's absolutely. I'd lay that. So anybody who listens to us or doesn't or just wants thoughts on it, I'm very comfortable laying draw no bet almost all the way up to minus 150. I won't do that often, but I think up to minus 135, minus 140, you're getting that protection with the draw where that's the range I like to be in. If you can be anywhere from obviously plus money, but all the way up to minus 140, very comfortable with it. Minus 130s, minus 135. Those are pretty common numbers right in the wheelhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the draw no bet might be a place to go because it is at Everton,
I could
and
see it.
I could see it. And you and I were talking before we started recording. Even Everton, their double chance right now is minus 190. You're not going to take them at minus 190, but if you're 30 minutes into this match and that comes down to the minus 130 range or so, like maybe that's something to take a
Yeah,
stab at.
listen, if you see Villa's getting frustrated, if Everton looks good, could go either way. But if Villa's going to be serious, they need to win this game.
Yeah, I agree. This is a must win for them if they're going to hang around in the title fight and even be a serious top 4 team and just kind of stave off teams that might be nipping at their heels in a few weeks, like the Spurs of the world, because only 3 points separate them from second and Spurs in 5th, and I think that's the big thing for them. All right, I think that's what we got for Premier League. Nick, you have anything
United
else
Spurs.
Oh, that's right. I almost forgot that one. Yep.
Last game, United Spurs. That's the Sunday late morning game, 11:30 Eastern. United at home, plus 120 money line. Spurs plus 195. I like Spurs in this game just because United is that inconsistent. Spurs have won 4 out of their last 5 in the league. I think they're starting to look like they belong, right? We were not necessarily believers of them early in the season after they got off to that incredibly hot start. They've fallen back down a little bit, but they've been hanging around kind of where they need to. The one caution is that Son will be missing for the Asian Cup, so that is a huge, huge loss, but Richarlison has looked good against all odds. They're not giving up a ton of goals. Certainly right around with United. They're scoring more than United, though. That's the big difference between these two teams. But you can get Tottenham plus quarter of a goal at minus 120. So if this game ends in a draw, you're getting half a cash. That's where I'm going with this one.
Yeah, I like that. Another thing I noticed in the trends is that Spurs is first to score most matches. United is first to concede most matches. Trying to see first goal. Spurs first goal is plus 105.
That's a great bet.
That might be one to consider. Because even like the Villa match we mentioned, United had to fight their way back to win that match. First to concede out of 5 out of 7. Spurs first to score 9 out of 10. That's something I would definitely consider at plus 105 as well.
I'm with you.
All right, so we'll leave it there. Plenty of hopefully you can digest all this. We'd love for you to hit us with your favorite bets either in the comments or on Twitter. Again, we apologize that this is just video only for this week until Scotty's back next week. We'll be back with our audio podcast on all of our regular platforms. Again, all of our locks of the week will be posted on our Patreon page for free. We will link that below. And we will hopefully have that up by late Thursday, early Friday for all the weekend matches. We thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys again next week.
Appreciate it, guys. Good luck.